Here's Dr. Run to Sleep, a long time no see, and today I want to talk about shooting on the water, and specifically shooting in a city like Venice, Italy. I'm originally from Mestre, a city by Venice, so most of the jobs I've done since I started working in film were in Venice itself. Without further ado, I'm gonna talk about this topic, shooting on the water, covering three main topics, three main themes, so to speak. The first one is boat organization. You're gonna have some sort of boat when you're shooting on the water. The second one is gonna be about the elements, the natural elements. Unfortunately, are gonna work against you most of the time and against the gear. And third, I'm gonna talk about self-awareness and how to move during water shooting. So without further ado, let's move on to the first point, boat organization. In a place like Venice, you're gonna have a boat for the entire production, unless you are shooting in Lido di Venezia, Sant'Erasmo, or other islands where there are actually cars. But other than that, if you're gonna be shooting in Venice itself, there's gonna be no trucks, no cars. In Venice, there are mototopo, which is the motorized version of a traditional boat, which is called topo. The mototopo, or as everyone calls it, the topo, it's a very specific boat used mainly for goods, for delivery. Whether you're part of the camera, grip, or electrical team, you're gonna use topi, which is the plural for topo. The idea about boat organization is pretty much the same as a truck, but you have to keep in mind that you're gonna have no ramp and the space is gonna be way more limited compared to any other sort of truck you might be used to. Before talking about spaces and how I normally organize the space on a topo during a film production, we need two important premises. The first one, not all topo boats have a cabin, and the second premise is that everything which is under the cabin is not gonna get wet, or there is a 90% chance that it's not gonna get wet at any point during the production. But if you have stuff under the balestrelle, which are wooden planks, there is a remote chance of stuff underneath getting wet if it starts raining heavily. If you're confused already, just keep in mind that your boat driver is the person that can explain everything. Most of them, they are professionals, they've been driving boats for decades. So if you're confused, just always ask them. Going back to boat organization, assuming that you actually have a cabin on your boat, the way I normally operate is this. Legs, hayet, and everything that can potentially get wet without a big damage towards the stern, towards the back of the boat. Everything else towards the front, the bow of the boat, under the cabin. How are you actually gonna organize the cabin space, which is gonna be the space with your more expensive stuff and more important stuff? Everything which is not gonna be needed daily is gonna go towards the bottom of the cabin. Empty cases, if you didn't drop them at the production office, follow focus, backup equipment, private equipment, rain clothing, towards the bottom, that would be the front of the boat. The more often something's gonna be needed, the more accessible it should be. Very intuitive. So if that was the first division that one can operate, so front back, there is a second division that one can do, which is between right side of the boat and left side of the boat. And that's gonna be particularly useful if you're gonna have to share the boat, for example, with the sound equipment. That happens still with trucks, and same with boats. Sometimes production is gonna give sound, video, and camera one single boat. It's good to have, just like on a truck, a free corridor to actually move up and down the boat. What I did on the last project, I had the boat just for camera gear, so it was very comfortable. But what I did was basically use one side with a cart used as a shelf, was basically empty but just used as a shelf, and then the other one just cases on the floor. So were all bags that I use daily, so they would come out the boat. So one thing which doesn't really make sense and kind of slows you down in Venice is to actually put all your bags on a mag liner as if you were like ready to shoot, when the mag liner is on a boat, is loaded on a boat. because you're still gonna have to put all the bags out and then take the magliners out of the boat and then put the bags back on the magliner, because as I said, there is no ramp. You're gonna have to do everything manually, the lifting of the magliner out of the boat, out of the cabin, and onto the ground. So there is no way that you can just lift magliner with all the bags. So the idea really in Venice to be as light as possible and as flexible as possible with equipment. So a magliner is very useful. It's hard to say, but sometimes it's not so useful in Venice. And a folded car sometimes is much better, much faster, especially if you need to move on foot in between different areas of the city, and there are bridges. There are a lot of bridges. So a magliner, unfortunately, is not always useful, and sometimes it's better on a boat used as a shelf. Not a happy ending, I know. Let's move on to the second point, which is natural elements. When shooting on the water, specifically in Venice, the elements are gonna be totally against you, especially if you are shooting in Venice in winter time. In terms of natural elements, the first problem is, guess what? Water. It goes without saying that you're gonna need a lot of drying paper, some white pole, blue roll, the heavy duty drying paper. Of course, just like any raining day. In addition to this, if you're shooting on the sea or in a lagoon, you're also gonna have salt in the water, and that's probably the most dangerous enemy of gear. Salt is dangerous because of its erosion capabilities. Rubber, aluminium, electronics are all at great danger. So what I do is firstly to clean the gear with drying paper soaked into fresh water. And then I would use WD-40 on non-rubber stuff. For rubbers, just use, I would say, normal fresh water. While for electronics parts and cables, I would use something specific like the WD-40 contact cleaner. Don't use the normal WD-40 because it's gonna leave residue, so you're gonna have to use specific products. And after water and salt, the third enemy, still linked to the first one, is humidity. Water vapor. One option to protect your gear from humidity is with silica gels. It's gonna be expandable, so at the start of the project you can ask production to buy some of the silica gels bags and just throw a bunch of them in the cases, lens cases, in the camera coffin, where the camera sleeps, where you keep your monitors, etc. These silica gels are gonna absorb water over time. You're gonna need to replace them from time to time, but they really can make a difference, especially if this gear sleeps overnight on the boat. Lenses and cameras usually do not sleep on the boat. Production is gonna rent a camera storage room in some sort of hotels. You're just gonna have to unload camera and lenses from the boat and store it safely in one of these rooms. Other than that, you might still have monitors, leave them on a boat. It's still electronics, still might need some protection against humidity, so silica gels are really come into use. Do not forget to also protect yourself from the elements. There's nothing worse than working with cold feet, freezing hands for 12 hours. Shooting on the water can really get you because humidity really makes you feel the cold much more. So if you stay on a boat for a lot of hours, you actually get very cold, even if you have a lot of layers on yourself. Don't forget to cover yourself, bring waterproof gear, always bring a change, or you might get wet, you might fall into the water. Hopefully you won't, but I saw a lot of people falling into the water. Bring double socks, heated soles, just like in any other wintertime production. Bring extra layers and bring spare clothes. And moving into the third and final point to round up this video, I would love to spend a couple of words about self-awareness. Venice is very unique in a good and bad way. So shooting Venice is something I would say more unique than some other places. So the first thing you have to keep in mind, Venice is very small and there are a lot of tourists. All year round, the city is just packed with tourists. Of course, when you're shooting on big productions, there's gonna be security. The set is gonna be sealed off, but on smaller productions, you might find yourself very soon surrounded by people, surrounded by tourists which are not part of the crew. and that can get very stressful very easily. Then you have to consider high tide. Every 12 hours the water goes up and then down. So you might find yourself at the same pier unloading the boat at the beginning of the day and then loading back the boat at the end of the day with totally different tide levels, which can make it way harder or way easier. So that's also something very specific to keep in mind in Venice. When you work on boats, you really have to have good balance. You might be used to it if you have boat experience, but it's not that intuitive to stay in a boat, walk in a boat, to grab equipment, open cases, and handle sometimes very expensive stuff when the ground under your feet is not stable and it's moving all the time. It might sound very banal, very obvious, but it is not. Also, going back to what I said before, I saw a lot of people over the years falling into the water. The classic is stepping onto the green. Never do that, it's very slippery. So just be aware. Be aware there might be a lot of people. Be aware that you're not shooting in normal conditions and you have to pay extra attention to yourself and extra attention to your gear. I hope this video made some kind of sense. I just took this footage and I really wanted to put out some content about shooting in Venice because I think it's such a unique place, and people, they keep coming back to Venice, and they've been working in the industry for like 30 years, but they're always amazed and they always find it fascinating, which it is. But Venice has its own problems and you have to be aware of them. Until the next running, filming or sleeping content. Yo!